Hello and welcome to Stripe Dialogues. Very good evening to everyone, all our viewers, and those who are going to view this video even after it is closed. Today is a very special day. Today is our 50th episode, or you can say Golden Jubilee episode of Stripe Dialogues. So we have come a fairly long way since this particular uh, story of ours began, our think tank began. And to celebrate this, we have a largest panel today and a very, I would say, important topic to discuss. We have with us General A.K. Chaturvedi, who is the Senior Vice Chairman of Tribe. We have Jan Thakkar, who is the academic head of Chive, and we have Colonel Rajiv Agarwal, who is a scholar with Manohar Parikar Institute of Defense and Strategic Analysis. So, welcome to all of you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and
So,
congratulations.
and
Well done to
congratulations,
sir.
congratulations to everyone, sir. And as you all aware, we are going to discuss today Bharat setting the tone for new world order. And I thought the topic for the 50th episode should be something big and brighter. It is both big and brighter. G20 accounts for almost around 80% of the gross world product, 75% of the international trade, two-thirds of the global population, and 60% of the world's land area. That gives you the magnitude of G20. However, there is a little catch in this. The global south, which consists of the bulk of the countries, are not part of G20 except after the induction of African Union. Certain global south countries now have some say in the G21 formulation, as we would like to say. So Bharat has just concluded the G20 summit, handed over the presidency to Brazil. Bharat took over the presidency from Indonesia last year, and it has set a benchmark which may be very difficult for the future presidents to emulate, given the way we did a blitzkrieg of G20 responsibility. Just to give you an idea, we conducted 220 plus meetings, and 17 of them were ministerial level meetings. In fact, the way we promoted this was, I would put it as a hyper aggressive promotion of G20. Uh, they were conducted in over 60 cities all across the country. And this also included Srinagar and Arunachal Pradesh, which was an eyesore. Arunachal was an eyesore for China, and Srinagar was an eyesore for Pakistan. Of course, these countries, I mean, their main reps avoided it. They sent their representatives, but it showed the will of the country to state to the world what comprises of India as far as our territorial integrity is concerned, map or no map released by China. Uh, there, then also, the New Delhi summit kicked off with a lot of apprehension. That was another major factor, with Xi Jinping at the last minute trying to. One could understand why Putin was not coming, but Xi Jinping not attending the summit. Probably he thought that if he doesn't attend the summit, then the summit's luster would go down, but that didn't happen. There was another issue that there was a lack of consensus on a major issue of G20, which was the joint statement. But subsequently, after a 15-hour hitch, it got resolved. And of course, the hitch was created by China, incidentally. There were over 25,000 delegates from 43 countries, oblique international agencies. That's huge. I think it has been one of the largest G20 uh, 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 meeting ever conducted in the history. The Bharat also had many bilateral meetings. I mean, I think the leaders would have been having a sleepless nights. We had bilaterals with UK, France, US, Middle East, Saudi Arabia, you name it. I think Bangladesh. We had almost bilateral with most of the countries whom we had invited, but it also hit some rocky weather, non-attendance, as I've
Except Canada.
yeah, except Canada. I mean, what I'm saying, it hit some rocky weather also. Non-attendance by Xi Jinping and Putin, joint declaration hitch for a considerable period of time. I think Prime Minister Modi heaved a sigh of relief in the afternoon when he said that I have just come to know that there has been an agreement on release of a joint statement. It was over Russia-Ukraine war. In addition, we also held multilateral meetings, and that was a big success. And these multilateral meetings were for biofuel, that is ethanol blending, creation of a spice route. The spice route is now catching traction instead of a corridor from India to Europe. The spice route to me looks more attractive as a formulation, as a counter to BRI, although we are not stating in those many terms that it is a counter to BRI. But I mean, let's face the fact, it is so. So finally, what I'm trying to get is that all these things have happened. The outcomes have, there are 112 outcome papers which were released. The largest till now, it is 2.5 times more than what other presidents have been releasing outcome document. That itself shows the kind of work which has gone in. But what we have gathered today is to discuss the result of these outcomes on the geopolitics of the world, with India as the focus. So my first question goes to General Kakkar, sir, to you. What will be the impact of the summit on India's standing in the Committee of Nations? Given the fact that G20 summit, some people are saying that it is dazzling the world. Okay, that is one of the words used by चमक. हिंदी में उसका वर्ड इस्तेमाल किया गया है चमक, G20 की चमक. तो इसका जो इम्पैक्ट होगा इंडिया के ऊपर ग्लोबल कमिटी ऑफ नेशंस में क्या होगा? योर व्यूज ऑन दिस, सर, जंग अख्तर.
Uh, Dushant, a few aspects, what you covered, and a few aspects which need to be amplified, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Number one, Xi Jinping not coming or Putin not coming makes no difference. The
Yes, sir.
major reason is the discussion on the outcomes is done by the Sherpas who already have the guidance from their governments.
That's
They
right.
are the ones who did it, and that is how it came out. The
Yeah,
leaders have nothing to do with it then. The point is what Xi Jinping had to speak or what Putin had to speak, whoever were the representatives read out the same speech. The
that's right.
fact is that they missed out on their bilaterals, and Xi Jinping not coming was because, after all, as the emperor of China, the number two country in the world, the most dominant one in Asia, will not get a bilateral with the Indian PM, nor would there be a pull aside, nor will there be anything other than the mandatory handshake. So for China, this is a setback. And for this setback to be overcome, the best way out is don't give a reason, don't come, and let the speculation go. And that is why we keep speculating. We don't look at it from Xi Jinping's view that it is more to save his own prestige. Secondly, this is possibly the only summit, or maybe one or more before this, where you never had a single protest. Otherwise, every summit, if you have a look at history, there is violence and there are protests all through. The aspect now, where does India reach from here? Like you yourself mentioned, 112 outcomes, the largest that any G7 has, G20 has ever been able to achieve. The inclusion of the African Union. Now you've got to link it up with the BRICS summit, where PM Modi again raised the point of Africa in the BRICS summit. You got to link it up with Jay Shankar's visit to Tanzania, to Uganda. In Tanzania and Uganda, we've opened educational institutes. We've opened an IIT there in Tanzania, and we've opened a Forsenic Institute in Uganda.
Yeah,
So India's soft power reach, along with vaccine diplomacy, along with aid, along with food diplomacy, we've actually now, and the inclusion of them into the G20. No wonder the African Union president said that India is a superpower.
hmm,
The reason being that you've actually now become the voice of the global south.
yeah,
As far as the rest of the world is concerned, the agreement on all the outcomes, despite the Ukraine war, when you had to change the wordings from a war against Ukraine to a war in Ukraine, that's the only change that you made.
yeah,
But the fact that they all went in for it, except Ukraine, which is crying and is not a member of the G20,
that's
but the
right.
fact is that you were able to pull the West, that is, sorry, the G7 and the Russia China, two different groups, into a common understanding.
Yeah.
So if China really wanted to intervene, it may have put its foot somewhere in between, but it did not. So actually, we moved way ahead when we came down to this factor. The other thing, you see, you showed to the globe that you can produce results in an organization like the G20 when none others have. 200 meetings, you see the outcomes, you see the push that you had towards biofuels, you see the way you moved in every direction. You look at the way you've sold your digitization. Now, giving 1,000 or 2,000 rupees on a UPI to every delegate who came in and let him attempt it and let him use it while
Yeah.
he's in India. The fact is, you've advertised your UPI free of charge through almost 30 odd countries. You had 40 heads of state or heads of
Yeah.
organizations who were present. So you've actually sold India. You look at you mentioned Srinagar. You also forgot to mention Ladakh, where again China and Pakistan cried. But
Yeah.
when you mention Srinagar, you look at the impact. Miss World 2023 is going to be in Srinagar at the end of the year. So you see the way things have begun to move. The last Miss World was in Bangalore. And today, look, where is it jumped from Bangalore to Srinagar? Now,
Srinagar.
if this is the way you're able to sell the country, if you, I mean, there's nothing else, but the fact is that India is now on top. Why is Canada crying? Canada
Mhm.
says if the most popular PM in the world with over 70% popularity doesn't even spare 2 minutes for you, where do you stand as a nation? Where do you
Yeah.
stand as a leader? The criticism that has flowed onto Trudeau from his own people that you've gone to India and in a country where, I mean, where you've not even been looked at, you've been ignored. And the most interesting part was in his press conference where he tried to justify the crap that the slap on the wrist that he got from Modi.
Mhm.
A reporter asked him a simple question: what was Canada's contribution to the G20? And Trudeau was fumbling for words.
Yep.
Yeah, or that was where he ended up because there was
Yeah.
nothing that he could say. He
That's
had
right.
no bilaterals, he had nothing to do, and then he wasted another 36 hours sitting in the hotel with no other further work. So, I mean, India put those countries that it wanted in place. It enhanced its relations with those that it wanted to build up. It displayed to the world its power in it, that is, it is acceptable to every side, whether you're the east, whether you're the west, whatever side you are, you're acceptable as a nation because you're India. You can pull diverse groups together and get them to produce results. So at the end of the day, it's just been a win-win for India. And I leave
Yeah.
it at that and I say that's where we stand today.
Okay, so the sum total or the key issue which I feel General Kakkad has really focused on is the centrality which India has achieved of its position in the global world order, which has come out very clearly, with the African Union president also mentioning India as some kind of a superpower. I would like Jan Chaturvedi to point at one issue out of the various aspects which General Kakkad has discussed, which to your mind is probably the most deciding or most impacting factor as far as India's position in the global committee of nations is concerned. Is India now becoming a pole, or it will still remain a swing power? That's the point which I'm trying to mention.
To my mind, we have miles to go. But one of the your point that one issue which gave heft to India in this was getting everyone to agree to African Union becoming 21st member of G20. So that is to my mind is one of the very important. If you slightly go back in the Pew research, it was found that Africans are beholden to China. The,
Yes,
they are
that's
part of substantially part of BRI also,
yeah.
and but that relationship is quite transactional. But with our vaccine diplomacy, with our certain support on account of food grains, and now this. uh, getting membership to those 55 members. And it gives hope to Indo-Pacific islands. And we
Yeah,
will talk a little more about them subsequently.
yeah,
What I'm saying is that a global South leadership is slightly transiting from China to India, though we have still to see the outcome part of it. But then the beginning has been made. To my mind, this is one of the most important. And in case if I have to give one more, that reclaiming, I won't say that spice route is a new idea. It's a reclaiming an old idea. 2000 years back, there was
absolutely.
a that
We
India's
are,
economy was flourishing because
we
of
had a,
its relationship with Roman Empire.
and
Now
we had
we
a
are reclaiming, trying to reclaim that,
we
and
had we,
and
we had a
imagine,
thriving trade with entire African subcontinent.
yes. So this will help us to build that relationship once again, and we will,
Correct.
and this will be a hope for many of those. That Modi's one sentence is that without loan. That is the important, because people, the stakeholders in this are not downtrodden. I mean, they are not global south. They're some of the richest countries of the world, and that
Yeah.
is how this is a second point which I feel is a very important outcome which has come. Although it will take some time for it to develop, but then the beginning has been made. These are
Okay,
the two
Rajiv.
things.
Thank you, sir. Rajiv, coming to you, I told General Chaturvedi to pick one issue which kind of outshines the other as far as the G20 summit is concerned. I want you to do the reverse. Pick one issue where probably we somewhere have not been able to achieve that kind of a aim which we wanted to achieve as far as G20 is concerned. Any, I mean, if it comes to your mind, could you point a finger at that?
No, I think, frankly, we have over and out achieved what we had set out for. So I don't think at this stage I can see anything, that we have left or was to be achieved. And in this, what I would like to add to what the other two senior
Yeah,
speakers have said is that
go ahead.
to me, the most outstanding aspect of this G20 was from day one, the canvas that India set for itself, the larger than life canvas of one earth, one family, one future. No other G20 has set a canvas which was so huge and so ambitious. And then to follow up with all the groups round the year in 10 months to get to what we did. And I'm reminded of two things that were mentioned during the G2 summit. One was when PM Modi said that in today's era, there is a lot of trust deficit, and we have to move towards building trust, because without trust, none of the 112 outcomes would have come about. And the other two aspects which I mentioned was how India, from this presidency's theme and doing and coming out with the outcome, is emerging truly as a Vishwa Guru and a Vishwa Mitra, because India enjoys the trust of everyone, whether it is the right or left, east or west, north or south, poor or rich. It is the bridge which everybody wants to be there to feel safe. And that is why today India is a global friend, a Vishwamitra, if not a Vishwaguru at this time, which it strives. So, to me, this was the most outstanding aspect of this presidency.
Okay, one quick question to you only. And since you are in the IDSA, I would like your mind to be picked up on this issue. Before we go to the next question, is China, after immediately after the summit was over, it came out with a very short statement saying that G20 is an economic grouping and it should be treated as such. What do you make of this?
So I'll take this question holistically. You see, a lot of people are talking about how China did not contribute, or whether, like General Kakkar said, President Xi not coming is a setback to him. Definitely, it's a setback to him. But let us not forget that these 112 outcomes would not have come if China had not come on board. Like I wrote in my article, whether it was reluctantly or by choice, but had China not come on board and still recorded its dissent, then it would not have been 100% consensus document. And for that, we have to give credit to some extent to the countries which lobbied on our behalf, both Indonesia as well as Brazil. and to Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia,
Okay.
who had to me the to my mind the final vote. Once he said that these paras are okay because the name of the Russia has been deleted, the aspect of war has been risen to a level where human suffering across the globe has been included in the para. I think China did not have an option but to agree. So we should give that credit to China that it was on board. Otherwise, 112 outcomes without 100% consensus would not have come about. But on the other side, it has definitely been a loss for China, a loss of face for China. And in their own calculation, they calculated what General Kakkad has said, and it didn't work out. And today they are trying to, find some face saving. And that one statement that they have given out is actually an effort towards that it is a economic grouping, and so geopolitical issues should not be taken
I mean, it should not be extended to geopolitics, is what they were trying to aim
that is
at.
the face saving. That is what I would say.
Yeah, so that is why my next question goes to the geopolitics, because one of the statement relates to directly relates to geopolitics, and that is the impact of the declaration on the Russia Ukraine war. What is going to be the impact on the future of Russia Ukraine war with this? Is it just going to be a semantics, or will there be some kind of an impact? I'm referring to as the grain deal, etc., which are now struck up because of the Russian position in the Russia Ukraine war. A quick comment from you on this issue, then we
So
will
the
move on to
first
the
thing
next.
that comes to mind is when you take the outcome of the G20 and the Delhi Declaration is that it has proven that Russia-Ukraine conflict is not the most important issue on the global table. And that is why when you have 20 heads of state plus the European Union plus the other members who are invitee and they also have a voice agree to it, you have to accept that Russia Ukraine war as it stands in September 23 is not the most important thing. So, what is most important? More important are the issues which the world is facing in terms of the increasing poverty, the lagging behind in sustainable development goals, the climate preservation, which the world has acknowledged. Second point regarding the Russia-Ukraine war is I think when the Bali summit took place in November 22, the conflict was only into its first summer and winter had not yet set in, and there was some hope that somewhere down the line, the lines will freeze and maybe some kind of a end of conflict would be there. With more than a year gone by and the second winter now about to set in, there is a
Certain.
sense of inevitability about the extension of this conflict, as also fatigue to my mind in the Western nation that this conflict is going nowhere. We may be hearing news of Ukraine getting F-16s and tanks and everything, but I sense that there's a sense of fatigue even in the West, that how long can they keep siding with Ukraine and how long can they keep Russia off the back, because Russia, China, and the rest without the West is gaining traction all across the globe.
Okay.
And the third thing, if I can just add, is that
Yeah.
I think the West is realizing two things with this war dragging on. One is that while they did not take any action which they could have taken after the 2014 Crimea war, and secondly,
Mhm.
maybe the folly of the late 90s pact, which was verbally a verbal pact, which had sort of prohibited an eastward expansion of NATO, which is very there, much there in black and white. And now, once it has been brought out, they sort of feel exposed and at a compromise. So that's it.
So there is so basically, this lack of a written document possibly gives a sense of caution in the NATO countries of extending the war beyond the boundaries of the existing NATO areas. Okay, fine.
Yes.
Quick
If I
comments
may,
from sir.
if I if I may,
Sir,
yeah,
I'm coming to you, sir. I'm coming to you, sir.
yeah.
Quick comment on the statement made by Colonel Rajiv, saying that the group of 23 countries or 20 countries feel that Russia-Ukraine war is not the most important thing as far as the world geopolitics is concerned. Your comments on this, and then finally I'll take the comment of Jan Kakkar, sir. Your Sir Jan
I,
Chaturvedi, sir.
I I totally endorse his view. And on one more thing in which I would like to add into it, why it is Russia is too huge a country, A. B,
Mm-hmm.
the resources are tremendous. And there is an interdependability of Europe substantially and also to Africa on account of resources which Russia has got. And in case the kind of centrality they have in Black Sea, they can the kind of food crisis which has been created in
Yes.
say countries of Africa, which is substantial. The kind of gas issue which Germany has suffered, because over a period of time they have totally weaned away themselves from nuclear energy. So now they are trying to go back to nuclear energy. So therefore, Russia cannot be ignored. So it's not only that geopolitics, but it is geoeconomics also equally involved into it. Thirdly, in case if Russia totally is made a pariah like this, thus this is showing the West in a poor light. James Baker's that famous statement that not even an inch will move eastward, which
Yeah.
Rajiv had alluded to.
Lots of
I think
mentioned.
I think this is something which puts, and also they are trying to say the only beneficiary in this whole thing is the American arms industry. Europe is suffering, so fatigue has to set in because America is trying to give them gas from their sources, but what about the cost is differential. So therefore, to my mind, Europe has also realized that this Ukraine war is not the most important war, and there are other things. You know, as he said, climate issues and all those things are far more important than this issue. The
Yeah. So
poverty elimination, SDG, and all those things are far more important than.
yeah, we'll come to that, sir. We'll come to that, sir. Uh, Question to the same thing to Jan Kakkad, sir. Quickly, don't you think Russia-Ukraine war has had a tremendous impact on the geopolitics of the world? At least I
See,
feel so. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but let me have your
see,
comments on this.
let's be very clear. The Russia-Ukraine war would have been a priority even here. But the fact is, you've got the G7 on one side, you've got Russia, China on the other. There is no way you would have reached an agreement. For India, it was very evident that you had to get an endorsement by all members. And if you realize, the statement even mentions about the grain deal, it mentions about all
Yes.
those factors that we need,
Yeah,
which implies that Russia Ukraine war is still a concern. It talks about humanitarian suffering, which is also flowing out of the Russia Ukraine war. But the fact is, if you were to concentrate on it like you did in Bali, you would achieve nowhere. And if
yeah,
one nation puts its foot down, the entire G20 summit outcome document is held back. So, therefore, if you wanted the outcome document to go, you wanted your name to go up, you had to compromise. And by compromising, you had to ensure that both sides come on the equal table. So, while you still consider the Russia Ukraine war to be important, but you've got to play games to ensure that it comes your way. Otherwise, you won't have raised the grain issue, you won't have raised humanitarian suffering, you won't have raised everything.
okay.
But the
My
fact you had to get it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So next question goes to Janil Chaturvedi, and that seems to be his favorite expertise, and that's about climate change. The goal which the declaration has set for itself of 1.5 degrees, restricting the global rise in temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade, and as a whole, the importance of climate change and the role of G20 as also the push which India has given to this particular aspect, although India may not have been successful itself in achieving that kind of target. What do you have to say on this? What your comments on the climate change in specific and the goal which has been set by the G20?
The first thing, let us be clear about one thing. Climate change is something which is inevitable. Gradually, it does take changes because there are three things. One is the global warming. Second is precipitation. Third is winds, and they are all interlinked, and that is what sums up the entire climate change. But the fact of the matter is, over a period of time, it has been that 1.5 degrees Celsius, which was decided, in case if that is achieved, then we are okay.
Okay.
And if the kind of a emissions, what is first, let's clear one thing, that today what is happening is about 23% is being absorbed by uh, the layer, because of the greenhouse effect, the atmospheric layer, and 48%
Yes.
comes to earth, but
After that,
and which gives ultraviolet rays. So now there's the more important is the, from the technical side, is more than technical side is the outcome side, that it is impacting the agriculture, it is impacting the say the complete monsoon pattern. It is more important is the sea is rising. Now sea is rising. There are certain countries, in case if it is not addressed, in case if it is assumed that by 2100 it will rise by 1 meter, and by that time Netherlands 47%,
Mm-hmm.
and even China about say 16%, Bangladesh, all these countries, many of them would be quite substantially impacted, and that will result into major migration of population inside or outside. Now, if that happens, it will be a very major issue. Now, the food would be much lesser and lesser because of the, and so therefore we have to go for mitigation right from beginning. Now, what is happening is that here the role of developed country is very important. They are 16% of the population, and 33% they are contributing to the waste which they are generating. Now,
Yeah.
what happens to that? Now, secondly, you have to find technologies which can convert this waste into useful things. A. Second thing is that what you need to do is you go to more and more into say renewables, and that is where this G20, one very important outcome is international biofuel alliance. You know, US, Brazil, and to a certain extent India has been part of it. But more and more, that biofuel, in case if we go, which is causing less than fossil fuel. And so we have to keep on reducing the dependence on fossil fuel, oil, and gas. And whereas go for more and more renewables, more and more for biofuel, more and more for nuclear energy for utilization. So therefore, I mean, I won't say this is, Americans may say because they have got uranium-based systems they are working on, whereas we have got 25% of Earth's thorium. In case if we can have this nuclear energy also, all put together, we can reduce the carbon signature substantially. Now, as far as India is concerned, there are certain not so good outcome, and there are certain very good outcomes. We are the only country we have get the whatever the Paris Agreement which was there, we have adhered to it.
Achieved it.
We have also been able to do the solar alliance that substantially in by 2030 we are saying that 500 gigawatt of energy by 2030, 50% will be dependence on renewables. So it is for our economics also, because our dependency is almost 80% on say fuel which is coming from oil and gas. So now if we go for more biofuel and nuclear and renewables, we will be okay. Our economics will improve, and so will be the words. So therefore, my suggestion is that this is something that climate change is something which is one of the most important issue today, and we need to find, there are certain natural issues we can't do much about it, but what we can do about anthropogenic, so which we are causing, say destruction of trees. Like last year, what happened? That was that floods were unprecedented, and it is because of the destruction which has been done on the account of CPEC. So therefore, this is something which needs to be addressed, and we all, the whole world, need to be come together on this issue.
So to that extent, you're right that it is the easiest possibly, at least verbally or in a document, to get a consensus on global commons, which is affecting the entire globe. But somehow, like as you highlighted, America uses 25% of the energy energy itself, right? So So the pollution goes all over, not only over America. America being a
And they
larger
want us to they want us to compensate by buying the
compensation.
carbon
So,
rights.
so the problem comes in the implementation, is what my take is, sir. And we
Yes.
will not go in for comments of the other speakers, because we want to cover a little more distance as far as this particular discussion is concerned. My next question goes to John Kakkad, sir. African Union has been inducted now into the G20. But if you've seen in the last few 10 odd years, India has also entered of Africa in a big way. When I say big way, the difference between the investment of China and Africa are very marginal. In fact, when I checked up last year, it was around 70 billion and 75 billion. That was the difference of about 5 billion. It may have increased now, but do you think this emerging competition within Africa between India and China is going to have an impact on the China-India relationship? Or your comments on this?
See, as far as Africa is concerned, both India and China are moving in. Not only India and China, even the US is moving in.
Then the
There
West
is
is
the
moving.
Yeah, there is that libido corridor which the US has, in fact, increased its investment, which connects two countries to the port in Angola. Right, they're also going in for a corridor, north-south corridor in Africa. Now, all of this is a challenge to BRI. BRI, everybody is aware, including African states, that it's a blood-sucking machine. I mean, people talk about it as a debt trap. I'd call it a blood sucking machine because it pulls away all the strategic assets, which is what China looks to grab. It and where it can exploit, it is looking at taking hold of those assets. In weaker African countries, it's taking over their forests, cutting the forests, actually driving the economy down the drain, impacting climate change, impacting a lot. Now, India can't match China in terms of the quantum of investment, but you're looking at it in a different way. It's not funds alone. The continent needs a lot of support. When we put the ban on rice export in the month of July, we have permitted it to go to African countries which are in need. Senegal and two, three more were already cleared then. We imposed a wheat cut last year. We've again reimposed it this year, but we're permitting it to go. We're imposing a sugar cut from 1st October, a sugar ban from 1st October. We will not put a block on it going to the African countries. The amount of vaccines that India sent to Africa, nobody else could match it. Which is why today India has major respect. Whether you go to Mozambique, where I've served in the UN, whether you go to any part of Africa today, India is a nation which is respected. It is respected because you've stood by them. Now, this soft power that you've carried, there are Indians in every part of Africa. You look at the Nigerian president when he was here for the G20. He came a day before, or 2 days before, the day PM Modi flew for the ASEAN summit. And he went back with $14 billion of investment, including $1 billion for defense equipment from the government of India. Now, that is the sort of pull that the African nations are going to get from India. And these are investments coming in, they're not loans being given. You're not blood sucking them, you are helping them develop. And when you help them develop, you gain their support, you gain their trust, you gain their reputation, and you become their speaker. Which is why today, when we say India represents the global south, it does. Now, China, the moment we inducted the G20, the first statement by the Chinese spokesperson was, "We were the first nation to support the entry of G20." Damn it,
Yeah,
what have you done all these years?
that's
You
right.
only started supporting it once India raised the issue.
Yeah,
The aim was again to try and challenge the Indian hold that India has got in the
correct.
G20. The fact is that India China difference is wherever there is a competition. You take it as Sri Lanka, you take it today in Africa, you take it in Southeast Asia, where we backed the Philippines and the water cannon issue as far as China was concerned. Today, we are providing the BrahMos missiles to the Philippines. We're looking at it at Vietnam. We're looking at it for Indonesia. So, wherever India and China
I
are come into
I
counter, there is going to be a problem.
I believe I've heard even I believe even the Russians are looking for BrahMos now. Reverse trade.
Yes. But the fact is, wherever India and China are going to compete, whichever continent, whichever country. It is going to impact the relationship, though we will always say, both the nations will say that there is enough space for both of us to operate together. That is the diplomatic way of saying we are competing, but let's not cut one another's throat. So that is where it is.
Okay, Rajiv, a question to you related to China-India relationship, because the competition is growing even in the Pacific Islands. If you see, both have entered now. The Chinese entered first. India has also started having that forum for Pacific Island and India forum, which they have started. So there is some kind of inroads going into the fresh markets, fresh areas. This is going to increase the competition, and competition invariably leads to confrontation at the borders. What do you have to say? Are you likely to see some kind of a increase in hostilities as far as the LAC is concerned? Your quick views on this.
I think what China and India do in Africa or in the Pacific Islands, it has got more to do with economics and projection of power, and seeing that their kind of ambitions and their kind of power projections are not undercut. But LAC is a totally different ball game that I feel, and right now it's kind of a frozen conflict. We have had, I think, 11 or 13 rounds of talk. One was held co-commander level
19,
just before the G20 summit,
19,
and 13, yeah,
19 rounds. 19
19 rounds.
rounds.
19 rounds. So one was held just before the G20 summit. It was still inconclusive, and there's no agreement on firstly the line of disengagement and then the modus of disengagement. So this is likely to remain frozen, and it'll have a larger impact on the India-China relations as such, because they remain frozen, as had been made very clearly by our foreign affairs minister also, that you cannot have a trade and talk and everything while the conflict remains frozen. But what happens in Africa, like General Kakkar said, there are two totally different models. India's model is on supporting development, whereas China's model is on doing things which lead to a trap, which only manifest in helping China's own economic interest, whereas India's model is more of a aid, more of a thing where you project your soft power and help the nation come up to the power and power of at least emerging nation status, and not a underdeveloped or a developing nation status. So both models are totally different, but I think LAC issue is different from what happens in Africa or Indo-Pacific.
Okay, I'll pick up one line from Rajiv's statement and ask General Chaturvedi. Trade and border talks can't go together. I mean, border tensions can't go together. Was the statement made by Mr. Jaishankar, our foreign minister? So, how do you think this is going to impact us? Don't you think this will create some kind of a trust deficit as far as India China are concerned whenever they're having a talk on the LAC? Because we have really not moved forward. After the Kailash ranges reoccupation, I mean, evacuation from Kailash ranges, we had some arrangement like buffer zones, etc., were created, four of them. But after that, nothing has moved forward. So, don't you think it may still lead to some kind of a heavy weather on the LAC?
Where is the trust? Trust had never been there between India and
That's,
China.
that's what I'm
Actually,
saying. So, if
China,
there is a
so long
economic war,
we kept on say acquiescing to their demands or something, that they keep coming. Earlier also they came to depths, and they we never resisted them. We never developed the border areas or something. They were quite okay, and trade was increasing, and we kept on becoming more and more dependent on, even say, our pharma industry is dependent on our steel industry is dependent on them substantially. Even in the lower technology, we became dependent on them. So therefore, it was a kind of a trap we were in. Now, once we started resisting, then the problem started. I think more important in this case is the Chinese mindset, which is based on a, say, racial arrogance, and that is that harm superiority over, even among themselves, be it Manchus, be it Tibetans, be it anyone. So firstly they think themselves that Middle Kingdom concept. Secondly, they think that they can, by trade, by making people this coercion technology, coercion techniques, which they have used against Pakistan, because which has become a totally a client state. Substantially, Maldives came out, but Sri Lanka is in their trap. And what Rajiv and Harsha had mentioned. So this is something, and this frozen LSC. Now, since we are developing our border areas, first they said that they criticized for us developing border areas, but more and more we do it. Now they have this a fait accompli. They also realize. So therefore, we we have to look into their eyes, and we have to keep on reducing the dependence on China and keep on improving our posture in maritime domain for us to be very to be able to influence their LSE posture, because China understands only the language of war. So when we went to Kailash Ridge for the first time, they decided to go back. Tell me, I mean, you know China better than any one of us, but tell me, when did they move back? They never move back. They have made the map. Now somebody say, thanks to previous chief, that he has come out with a nice map which shows that what exactly the Han China is. Rest all is they have captured, whether it's Ming
Actually,
dynasty, later King
pre-
dynasty, and later
previous
PRC.
previous previous chief retweeted the map which was published in Indian Express and said that somebody has come up with the right map
Right,
of
man.
China. That was his tweet,
Yes.
and that was picked up by the media. Sir, fine, sir. Since we are running out of time, we'll have the last question, and this I'll ask Colonel Rajiv to give a very short answer to this, and thereafter General Chaturvedi, and final comment by General Kakkad on this issue, which is about the spice route. We have had a discussion on this, but I want now you all to focus on the spice routes model, the BRI model, and is it really going to replace the BRI in the West Asia? Because that would be the biggest thing. If we are able to replace the BRI initiatives which the Chinese have been trying through the Saudi Arabia and Iran deal, etc., etc., maybe the influence in West Asia of India and the West, or rest of the world, will somewhere outshadow the Chinese influence in this region, because Chinese have a considerable amount of influence in West Asia. Your views? We'll
So,
start with Colonel Rajiv. We'll start with Colonel Rajiv and then Jan Chaturvedi.
So thanks. So the IMEEC and BRI are two totally different models, and that is why there is a very little as far as comparison can be done. The BRI went through the entire heartland and hinterland of the Asian continent, right from east to west, and therefore there was lots and lots of work and construction of roads, bridges, etc., which was required to make it viable and feasible. Whereas in this case, if you see the plan that has been made, it is a combined route of ship and rail routes. In the rail routes, the major part of the rail route is running across the Middle East, for which there is already work on in terms of a GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council railway infrastructure, which was been in the doing for last few years. So when you compare the BRI versus the IMEC, the first giveaway is that there is very little infrastructural work which is required to be done in IMEC to make it functional and operational. It is a geopolitical will of the countries which are en route and which are bound by this corridor, which is more important. And that is why the prospects of IMEC becoming very successful model are more as compared to BRI, which is run into all sorts of problems because of infrastructure, because of land crossing through different countries. And now we all know the latest, where the only G20 or G7 country, Italy, which was part of the BRI, has announced the pullout. So BRI is in trouble, and IMEC is a very viable and feasible option in a short period of time.
Okay, I think the point is well taken, but my question was really a little more than that, and that is, will BRI start losing steam as far as the rest of these countries are concerned? Italy has pulled out, etc., because of this IMECC initiative. General Chaturvedi, sir, your
Uh,
views on this?
My sense is, firstly, that IMEC concept, which is spice route concept, shows two things very clearly. One is that sense of Indian planners in conjunction with rest of the world, a very in-depth study of history. You know, this was the route which was from classical times it was going on. So when the Spanish, the Tancho gave that's about say 2021 this paper he published, and where he said that this is feasible. Now the important part of it is that second is the geopolitics of the area. India cannot think of going through Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and the Chabahar to that INSTC is becoming, because of Russian sanction,
Yeah,
is becoming a problematic.
correct.
India and US, these countries have been working on this for some time. You know, if you recall, Modi, when he went to US, on his way back he went to Greece. So Peruse, he just got it, that which has been built by China. That is the terminal point for entry into the say Europe. Secondly, Haifa, Adani has going for it, though part of it is still with China, and therefore this is the classical route. Now to start with, even if Atal Bihari Vajpayee said that our strategic neighbors are up to Aden. So now up to Aden we will reach first. That is sea route, and which is possible. Second is that railroad, as Raji very rightly said, that work has already commenced. And third is that from there is a Jordan and Israel. They have got, notwithstanding what their statement is, but they are supporting each other. And post that ship in 20, when it got stuck in Suez, you have to find a way out. So Haifa assumes that importance. Now, third thing is financial part of it. Now, financially, unlike BRI, here you have US, one of the stakeholders, European Union, which is Germany, France, and Italy, three of the most important countries. GCC, India has got a maximum trade, and also they are cash rich. They are sitting on the, say, Saudi Arabia, UAE. They are very rich. India has got technical expertise. So, therefore, to my mind, firstly, let us, I go with what Rajiv says very rightly, that these two are different models. And for the time being, we should not try to say this mutual exclusivity that we will replace them, because that is where we will start having a problem. First, let this become a functional, let people start seeing the relevance and importance of it. Because if you notice in this case what will happen, even China will not be able to ignore it. From Gwadar, instead of going somewhere else, they will use this route to reach Europe, because Trieste is no longer available to them. So therefore, even China will be, even say countries of Africa, say Mauritius and all, they will find into it. So therefore,
Open.
this is something which is possible, and this is, firstly, let us make it feasible, and the technical expertise of India, because you know that one of the agreement with the Saudi Arabia has been that undersea cable for
Yeah.
electricity. Now, electricity, that is one. Hydrogen, second. All pipeline with Oman is already working on, India is working on. With all these things is becoming, so not only the, say, goods, services, and energy also would be, this will be the very useful route. To my mind, let this become, the I2U2 concept will also be useful in this case. That is what I
Okay.
think.
Okay. I think, sir, we have absolutely run out of
Dushant,
time.
Dushant,
Yes, sir. Yes.
Dushant, we need to take two things into consideration somewhere where we missed.
Yeah.
Let's go back a little bit in time. February this
Hmm.
year,
Hmm.
Adani taking over the Haifa port.
Yeah.
You
I
mean to
said,
Yeah.
say, you mean to
Yeah.
say, I mean, this entire corridor was nowhere in the thought process? Come on.
Would have been. Would have been.
And then
Definitely, it was there.
subsequently, when the
It was.
PM went to
It,
Greece, he's now
I
taking
agree
over
with you.
one of the two ports in Greece.
Yeah.
So
I
you see,
agree
the
with you.
point is there was a lot of thought given to this for quite some
Yes.
time, but
Yeah.
we
Definitely.
tended to gloss over it.
Hmm.
Secondly, the construction of the railway route will largely be done by the Indian Railways, who already have an expertise and are already involved in it. So
Absolutely,
you see,
absolutely.
the third aspect, and I will leave it here, every stakeholder is pumping in money.
Yeah,
If you're pumping in money, you're going to ensure it works.
yeah.
Whether it's the GCC, whether it's the EU, whether it's the US, whether it's India. So that is where the intention is. And we were thinking way ahead when Adani was there in Haifa in February. All were
Yeah,
wondering why. And whom did he outbid? He outbid the Chinese,
yeah,
right? He outbid the
yeah,
Chinese to get the port. And now you look, when Benjamin Netanyahu said the same day when this thing
mm,
was announced that Haifa will play a major role. So you mean
yeah,
to say India, Israel were not in picture? You mean to say the whole thing was not there in the pipeline? The fact
yeah.
it was announced here is different, but preparations were made well in time.
Yes.
Definitely, definitely. These agreements are when they're finally signed. A lot of groundwork goes before these things are signed actually in formal form. Sir, we have had a wonderful discussion. We are in fact over time, well over our time of discussion, and that would happen because of the panel being of three people and me also chatting in between and trying to disturb you all. But let's now move on to the question answers because a lot of questions are there in the chat box. Today, I tell my audience that I'm going to pick one question of each person. I'm not going to pick up questions of all the questions of everyone. So kindly excuse me if I am glossing over some of the questions, but we'll give you. There are some questions which are of a political overtone. We do not like to have a discussion on political overtone. I'll just give an example of this, and if the speaker wants to give a comment, it is up to him. Otherwise, I'll leave it at that. And this was basically related to this question asked by JBJP. Ask General Kakkad sir, Miss World will be held in Kashmir, but what about justice to Jammu? Jammu has been made a second-class internal colony of Kashmir for 75 years. Ladakh got justice, why not Jammu? So I leave it to you, sir. You want to give the
I
comment, you give it.
actually, I just want to say one thing, and I'm not going to get into it because there are lots of issues which I would not want to discuss on a public platform. The fact is, Jammu is not going to be ignored. You've got to see the way development is moving towards Jammu, especially with the way industries are coming into the belt. Srinagar was way behind the way one looked at it in terms of development because of what it went through for 20 for odd 20 odd years. Today the catch up process has begun. Jammu was ahead, it's going to remain ahead. Yes, if you're looking at it in terms of statehood, I don't think you can split a JNK into three union territories. It doesn't make sense. I leave it at that and I won't get into further debate.
Okay, I think JBG and Jakpreet Batraji, you will also understand why we are not tackling your political issues here because it will unnecessarily create, some kind of a debate which will go to a totally different direction. And this is a discussion on the G20, on the the brighter side of our geopolitics, geoeconomics. All those issues are being discussed, but we fully appreciate your concern, what you are raising, whether it is related to Punjab, Himachal, or Jammu Kashmir. They are a burning issues, and we'll leave it at that. We have next question, which is coming from Rakesh Bhatia. India's message to the world post G20 summit I'll put, probably is that the world must move away from imposing ideologies on others and rather work towards economic development of all. Views of the panel, one word. I think I agree with this.
Uh,
I think all of you,
it's just a
all of
Agreed.
simple thing, Dushant. It's just one simple thing.
yeah,
The US tried to impose this ideology in Afghanistan. It failed.
mm, yeah.
It tried to do it in Iraq. It's failed. So wherever you try and impose an ideology, it doesn't work. So that is why the
Soviet
statement.
Union imploded.
Hmm?
Soviet Union imploded.
You look at it in Vietnam.
Either
Vietnam is today communist. So I mean,
communist.
it doesn't work. That's it.
Okay, so next question is from Batra. Ask General Dushyant and respected guests, G's. It is learned that Zelensky has given some kind of warning to Europe. That Europe, what is it, and what will be the response, sir? Yeah. Anyone who wants to take it on? Otherwise,
See,
I'll.
Why Zelensky? Yesterday, the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken made a statement that in case Russia is keen for talks, we can move forward for talks.
Yeah, yeah.
Zelensky has been saying all through that there will be no talks. We'll fight to the end. We'll get every inch back. We want money. We want weapons. We want equipment. The West has now realized how much are you going to pump? How much of your own economy are you going to drain? Uh, Ukraine can pay back over the next 70 years, but currently today you're losing the money. And that is why even Blinken today is now hinting towards talk. But Putin is now waiting for the fund to go. He's waiting for how long more are these guys going to pump it. So there is Zelensky's threats and Blinken's views are absolutely contrary to one another.
So anybody else would like to contribute to it?
No, so like I said, I mean, there's a sense of fatigue with this war, and people are thinking of how to move on. General Chaturvedi mentioned about the food crisis and the energy crisis being associated with it. So it's not just the military conflict which has to be seen by what is being seen by Ukrainian President Zelensky as his only concern. The issues are larger and more interlinked than just the military conflict.
Okay, I mean,
Actually,
yes, sir.
Zelensky, Zelensky is seeing from his perspective, whereas rest of the world has to see from a larger perspective. A larger perspective is not Ukraine alone, because there had been problems with Ukraine, and Ukraine. It's not that they had been very, say, paragon of virtues in the Donbass area. So the way they had been doing this thing. So therefore, this is a problem, and the problem is 1954 when Khrushchev presented Crimea, which was not part of Ukraine traditionally. So therefore, I think Zelensky has very little case, and I think sooner he realizes, better it is. And if he doesn't realize that, God has to make him realize that, friend, this is and no more.
Okay, I mean, what Jagpreet wanted to know was some andar ka khabar. The andar ka khabar is that the European countries are now actually giving clear messages to Zelensky that this war is heading nowhere, and we have to find a solution to the problem, and for that you have to move in for talks. See, even if the promise of F-60 by Netherlands, it will come next year. Will he be able to sustain till that time? And then there has to be training on these new equipment which are Western oriented. Till the time it was Eastern Bloc equipment, they were able to
Now,
handle it. So
does Zelensky realize this F-16 means giving a capability of nuclear arms?
yeah.
Do they have? So
So
what Russia will do against this will be disastrous. Americans
yeah,
will never allow. I mean, this is something. And where will that F-16 will take off from?
correct.
Ukrainian airfields are not suitable for F-16 to take off. The
Yeah.
kind of state they're in. So therefore, F-16 is a ruse.
Okay. Next question is by Vinod Khandelwal. Post G20, now the slash has started. I think we should start using the term G21. Post G21, will India's rise in world order provide a fillip toward a seat in the UNSC? Yeah, it's a good question. That's why I picked it up from all the other comments which were going on. Views. We can start with Rajiv because I want to give opportunity to the junior most so that he sets the tone for the others to talk. Yeah, Rajiv.
Yes, I mean, this is a thing which is long pending and waiting to happen. And we must remember that G20 includes all the P5 members. So if G20 could reach a consensus on much larger issues, including the Ukrainian conflict, and give a outcome document, despite the sense of a compromise to give this outcome document a shape or declaration and give G20 summit a success, I think UNSC reform has to be has to be the next step. When it happens and how it happens is a question. Dr. Jaishankar was asked this question 2 days back, and he said, even though everybody is saying about it, but I haven't seen any nation or any paper being moved. And without a paper being moved, how can a resolution be even placed on the table, discussed, or passed? And in just recent days, I've noted, sir, the French president, US, Germany, UK, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and even Turkey, all these presidents of league prime ministers have made a clear public statement in the G20 and after G20 that India has to be part of the UNSC. So to me, it is not a question of if, but it is now a question of when it is supposed to happen. And for that, the most important thing is first a paper has to be tabled, then only things can move forward. It just can't move forward on verbal, press conferences or statements after meetings.
Okay. Um, it's a question. Next question, which I'm going to put it across.
No, in
It is.
this one point I would like to add:
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
elephant in the room is China. So they
No, it's
are
not
the,
that. No, Chaturvedi sir, it's not China alone. Please.
Yeah, there are
China
hidden
is
hidden
one.
people.
You've
There are
got
hidden
another
people
group
also.
called Unifying for Consensus.
Yeah,
Pakistan, Italy, and a large number of others.
yeah.
no,
They,
what I'm saying
they
is
are,
that
no,
UNSC.
one sec, sir. They are talking not in terms of reform of the UNSC by including a country as a permanent member. Their question of unifying for consensus is increase the number of members in the UNSC with
And more
five
final.
permanent continuing. Nobody is looking at adding an extra one. As far as China is concerned, China is the only one within the group of five which is anti India joining. But unifying for consensus has got Pakistan, Italy, and a large number of
No,
others.
I
So
agree, but what I'm
realize,
saying is that unless China comes on board, how can you?
sir, China is only one. You see, you've got to realize there are four countries which are supporting one another for UNSC: India, Germany, Japan, and I think the fourth is
Brazil.
Brazil, Brazil,
Brazil.
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 Now, we four are supporting one another. The Unifying for Consensus has got a group which is anti each of them: South Korea, Italy, Pakistan. So you've got groups which are against each
And
of them.
Argentina.
So you've got those groups, that is one. You've got China, which is separate. So it's not one. You've got to deal with the whole gang. And then you've got to go through the General Assembly, get that pushed through from there before it comes to the UNSC.
I think a
So,
paper, tabling
sir,
of paper is the first.
it is going to be a Ram Kahani for another long time.
Okay, so the next question is slightly political, but I thought you could attempt it. I don't know. Today we are having a lot of people talking politics in today's discussion, which is very rare. Main opposition political party were critical about the expenditure of G20 and the president's dinner. If change of power in Delhi, will G20 agreements be followed? Yeah.
No, I think the G20 agreements are different,
Basically,
and
sir, if we de-link the question from dinner and other thing, simply if I were to ask this question, if there was a change in the government at Delhi, what will be the impact on the G20 agreements which have taken place? I'm
I
removing the
think they will
politics.
continue. I think they'll continue. To my mind, they will continue because they have got a far-reaching implications. And on these issues, while in opposition, one may say anything, but once you are in power, you will say the same thing. And as far as expenditure is concerned, I think it has been clarified that the permanent assets should not be counted towards it. 990 crores was the budget approved for G20, and the total budget, other than permanent structure, that is Bharat Mandapam and all those things which has been created, is only
That's an
sub
asset.
100 crores
Yeah.
or something. So it is
It-
much
It's
less
like
than.
it's like what the assets were created during the Asian Games way back in
Yes,
1970s. I mean, if you have to calculate the expenditure, then that would have come to 100, 200 times more than what we have done today.
yes.
So
So therefore,
it's
expenditure. Now that is why suddenly people did raise the voice, but now they're all quiet. Nobody is raising the.
because in future they may have to do the same thing and they will have to follow the same follow
No,
the
after
same kind of.
Chogan was done by when Congress was in power in 80s in Goa, they created infrastructure.
I'm
On
saying,
NAM in Delhi, it was done.
Yeah, Rajiv, you want to say something?
yeah, what I wanted to say, international agreements which are done on a multilateral forum, they go well beyond the parties which are in power. So whether this government is there or not there in the ensuing years, it is the government of the day which is which is empowered and has to take it forward. And it is not an agreement which is binding on only one nation. It's a whole group of nations, including AU and EU, which have signed on it. So it's a collective responsibility of the G2. It doesn't matter at all whether one party or other party is in power in India or anywhere else within the G20. It is an institutional mechanism, and it will follow up in the shape and way it has to follow in the ensuing years.
Yeah. So I think we leave it that, and we are now coming to almost 1 hour 10 minutes. So that is we are reaching our closing time. Before we close down, I would request every one of you, please like and subscribe to our channel. We are making a lot of effort to bring to you some quality discussions, some relevant issues, devoid of any political overtones, and pure information and pure analysis, which is, I think, much more important than listening to gibberish, which is there in various channels. So, to that extent, hope you all will support us. Last question is from Tamil Hindu, and thereafter we'll close the today's discussion. Sir, Poland has some ambitions on reacquiring some parts, that is Ukraine now. Do you foresee that happening?
No, they won't.
So,
The West will not let it happen.
see the international,
Otherwise, it will mean opening another front. So it will
yeah,
not happen.
Now boundaries cannot be changed.
it is going to be very difficult unless a superpower does something on its own. It is going to be very, very difficult for anyone to intervene in a manner and carve out. This was a news which was floating around. Let me just say, since I follow Ukraine war quite close, this was the news which was floating around about 3 weeks back when who was the guy who was assassinated? Prigozhin. So when Prigozhin was
Wasn't.
assassinated, in that point in time, Poland khabar was quite ripe that if there is something, Poland will enter and then it will carve out something for from Ukraine based on the historical perspective. But that is not going to happen. I think that was just a narrative built by some people. We'll leave it at that, sir. And thanks a lot to all our audience. You all have had an internal discussion on Punjab, Himachal, and Jammu. Uh, Please carry it on on your own. We will not answer those questions. Thank you very much to all of you, sir, especially to Rajiv, who has taken time out from his work in IDSA to be with us. He's taken permission to be on
Thank you,
this
sir.
channel,
Thank you.
and also to John Chaturvedi and John Kakkar, sir. Thanks a lot. Before I close this thing, let me just play the our usual like subscribe music.
Okay, Arnav.
Rajiv,